The courtroom was silent, but my chest felt like it was splitting open. I could hear the soft tick of the wall clock behind the judge's bench. I could hear the slow inhale and exhale of my mother's breath. I could even hear the faint scrape of my father's shoe against the polished floor as he shifted comfortably in his seat. They were relaxed. Confident. Certain. Their lawyer leaned back with the smug ease of a man who believed the ending had already been written. He tapped a gold pen lightly against a thick leather folder, smiling as though this hearing were nothing more than a technicality. Then the judge adjusted his glasses, glanced down at the paperwork, and began reading the list of my assets out loud. The tapping stopped. The smile froze. And when the judge reached the final page, the lawyer stood up so abruptly that his chair screeched across the floor, echoing through the courtroom. His face drained of color. That was the moment I knew. They finally understood who I really was. I grew up in a house where love was measured by obedience. My parents didn't hit or scream. They didn't need to. Their control came in quieter ways: raised eyebrows, disappointed sighs, long lectures about how the world works. They believed authority meant wisdom, and they expected absolute compliance in return. My older brother mastered that system perfectly. He repeated their opinions. He asked for permission. He stayed close. He was rewarded with praise, help, and endless reassurance. I wasn't built like that. I asked questions. I wanted explanations. I noticed inconsistencies. And the moment I stopped accepting, because I said so, as an answer, I became a problem. They called me stubborn. Then difficult. Then irresponsible. The label followed me everywhere. When I worked after school, they said I was wasting time. When I saved money, they said I didn't understand finances. When I talked about moving out, they laughed openly. Life will humble you, my father used to say, shaking his head. I believed him, just not in the way he meant. I moved out at 19 with 2 suitcases and a budget written on scrap paper. I didn't leave because I was angry. I left because staying meant shrinking. Every day in that house felt like proof that my independence threatened them. Those first years were hard. I worked 2 jobs while finishing school. I lived in a tiny apartment with thin walls and secondhand furniture. I tracked every dollar. I skipped luxuries without resentment. I learned discipline not from privilege, but from necessity. What I learned most, though, was silence. I stopped sharing my plans. I stopped explaining my decisions. I stopped asking for validation. Privacy became my armor. My parents assumed I was struggling. They believed I would fail eventually and come back asking for help. They spoke about me to relatives as though I were a cautionary tale. And I let them. They never knew about the savings account I opened with my first serious paycheck. They never knew about the freelance work I took late at night. They never knew how carefully I studied investing before making my first move. I didn't need them to know. I needed them to underestimate me. My grandmother was the only one who ever saw through me completely. She noticed how carefully I listened. How I watched people instead of talking over them. How I absorbed information quietly and stored it away. The quiet ones in a family, she once told me, are usually the ones paying attention. When she became ill, I was the one who showed up consistently. I sat with her through long afternoons. I managed her appointments. I listened when she spoke about her fears. One afternoon, her voice barely above a whisper, she said something that changed everything. They will fight over what I leave behind, she said. And they'll try to control you to get it. She wasn't guessing. She was warning me. Together, we planned. Carefully. Legally. Thoroughly. Long before she passed, we worked with an attorney to protect her assets and ensure her wishes couldn't be twisted or challenged. She trusted me, not because I demanded it, but because I had earned it. When she died, she left me her inheritance. Not my parents. Not my brother. Me. The room went quiet when the will was read. My parents didn't look at me. They looked at each other. And in that moment, I understood something chilling. I had crossed an invisible line. At first, they pretended nothing was wrong. My mother called daily, her voice soft, asking if I was overwhelmed. My father suggested meeting to talk things through. They spoke gently, cautiously, as though afraid to spook me. Then the suggestions began. Money like that can be dangerous, my mother said. You don't want to make mistakes, my father added. Let us help you manage it, temporarily. I refused politely. The warmth vanished immediately. Their questions turned sharp. Their concern turned into accusation. They reminded me of everything they had done for me. They hinted at ingratitude. They spoke as though my independence were betrayal. When I refused again, they stopped pretending. 2 weeks later, I was served court papers. They weren't asking for guidance. They were asking the court to declare me financially incompetent. They claimed I was irresponsible, emotionally unstable, unfit to manage my inheritance. They requested control over my bank accounts, my car, and even my apartment, one I had purchased entirely with my own money. They lied openly. They claimed family funds had helped me buy my home. That lie hurt more than the rest. I read the petition slowly, my hands steady. I didn't cry. I didn't call them. I understood something clearly in that moment. This wasn't about money. This was about power. They wanted to punish me for leaving. For succeeding without them. For proving I didn't need their permission to exist. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. Revenge isn't rage. Revenge is patience sharpened into strategy. I hired an attorney known for precision, not performance. I handed her organized folders, every paycheck, every receipt, every investment statement, every legal document. She listened carefully. When I finished, she said, "They think they know you. That's their mistake." She was right. Years earlier, after my grandmother fell ill, I had created additional safeguards. After her death, I went further. I established a trust, quietly, legally, and thoroughly, separating her inheritance from my personal assets. By the time my parents filed their petition, the door they were trying to force open had already been sealed shut. They just didn't know it yet. The day of the hearing, my parents arrived early. They dressed carefully, soft colors, respectable, harmless. Their lawyer greeted the judge warmly, as if this case were already decided. I arrived alone. Their lawyer spoke first. He painted me as reckless, defiant, emotionally immature. He described my independence as instability. He framed my refusal to hand over control as proof of irresponsibility. My mother dabbed her eyes on cue. My father sighed deeply, playing the role of the burdened parent. Then the judge asked for the financial records. And the illusion began to crumble. The judge read slowly. Savings accounts, opened years before the inheritance. Credit history, perfect. Vehicle, fully paid, registered solely in my name. Then he paused. This residence, he said, scanning the document, is not a lease. The courtroom froze. This is a purchased property. My mother's grip tightened on her purse. The judge continued. Investments. Business interests. Long-term assets. The lawyer's confidence drained visibly. When the judge reached the trust documents, he stopped entirely. This trust, he said carefully, was created prior to the deceased's passing. He looked directly at me. And it was created by the respondent. I stood. Yes, Your Honor. To protect my grandmother's wishes. I explained everything, the planning, the legal safeguards, the foresight they never believed I possessed. Then my attorney submitted the final evidence. A recording. My parents' voices filled the courtroom, cold, calculated, discussing how they would drain my accounts, sell my car, and teach me humility. The judge listened without interruption. When it ended, he closed the file. This petition is denied, he said firmly. Dismissed with prejudice. In the hallway, my parents finally looked at me. Not with anger. With disbelief. I didn't do this to hurt you, I said calmly. I did it because you tried to control what you didn't earn. They had no response. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the one they tried to steal, and felt something settle deep inside my chest. Freedom. Revenge wasn't destruction. It was survival done so well that the people who doubted me were forced to confront their own failure. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the irresponsible child they imagined. I was untouchable. The end.